everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday afternoon from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over the airways of Sirius XM. Mad Dog Sports Radio. The number to call up as always is 888 Mad Dog 6. That's 888-623-3646. Wonderful day of sports. Whole bunch of stuff to talk about today. Something special transpired last night at the ESPYs. And although the ESPYs is always special from the standpoint of what its ultimate agenda is, number one, to celebrate the modern-day athlete, the exploits of the modern-day athlete, and number two, to obviously heighten awareness towards the Jimmy V Foundation and the fight against cancer. Craig Sager in his speech last night was wonderful, just like Stuart Scott's speech 2 years ago was wonderful, just like Jimmy Valvano's speech was epic in the 80s. We all know that when we're talking about the ESPYs, ultimately and primarily it's about that. Awareness and the fight against cancer. But last night took a twist, a different turn. Because in the aftermath of two killings by law enforcement officials of African Americans, in the aftermath, subsequently, 5 police officers being gunned down in the streets of Dallas, Texas, by an ultimate coward. Players like Carmelo Anthony and Chris Paul and Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, 4 very close friends who also happen to be superstars in the National Basketball Association, with the ultimate superstar, the star of stars, and LeBron James being in attendance for it as well. They decided to do the cold open for the ESPYs. They are the ones who called the ESPN. They are the ones who said they wanted to do what they ended up doing. And they showed up last night. And they did just that, tackling some of the toughest issues permeating our society in the modern day era. Police brutality, irresponsibly reciprocating that brutality by being brutal in and of itself, with 5 police officers being murdered. Again, led by Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James took center stage last night to open the 2016 ESPYs. Listen to what they had to say.
Good evening. Tonight is a celebration of sports, celebrating our accomplishments and our victories. But in this moment of celebration, we ask to start the show tonight this way. The 4 of us talking to our fellow athletes with the country watching, because we cannot ignore the realities of the current state of America. The events of the past week have put a spotlight on the injustice, distrust, and anger that plague so many of us. The system is broken. The problems are not new. The violence is not new. And the racial divide definitely is not new. But the urgency to create change is at an all-time high.
We stand here tonight accepting our role in uniting communities to be the change we need to see. We stand before you as fathers, sons, husbands, brothers, uncles, and in my case, as an African-American man and the nephew of a police officer who was one of the hundreds of thousands of great officers serving this country. But Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Eric Gardner, Laquan McDonald, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile. This is also our reality. Generations ago, legends like Jesse Owens, Jackie Robinson, Muhammad Ali, John Carlos, and Tommy Smith, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jim Brown, Billie Jean King, Arthur Ashe, and countless others. They set a model for what athletes should stand for. So we choose to follow in their footsteps.
The racial profiling has to stop. The shoot-to-kill mentality has to stop. Not seeing the value of black and brown bodies has to stop. But also the retaliation has to stop. The endless gun violence in places like Chicago, Dallas, not to mention Orlando, it has to stop. Enough. Enough is enough. Now, as athletes, it's on us to challenge each other to do even more than what we already do in our own communities. And the conversation cannot stop as our schedules get busy again. It won't always be convenient. It won't. It won't always be comfortable. But it is necessary.
We all feel helpless and frustrated by the violence. We do. But that's not acceptable. It's time to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what are we doing to create change? It's not about being a role model. It's not about our responsibilities to the tradition of activism. I know tonight we'll honor Muhammad Ali, the GOAT. But to do his legacy any justice, let's use this moment as a call to action for all professional athletes to educate ourselves, explore these issues, speak up, use our influence, and renounce all violence. And most importantly, go back to our communities, invest our time, our resources, help rebuild them, help strengthen them, help change them. We all have to do better. Thank you.
I cannot express enough how proud I am of those brothers. I've known Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, and Dwayne Wade, to a lesser degree, LeBron James, their entire careers in the NBA. Every one of them are good brothers. Every one of them care about their community. Every one of them are conscientious observers. Every one of them want to do something that's productive and has an impact in a positive manner on all communities throughout this nation, not just the black community. But when they stood up, specifically Chris Paul, and uttered the words about himself being an African American, being a black man, reminding the world or informing the world of the fact that he is the nephew of a police officer, I thought all their speeches were poignant, all their speeches were powerful, but his resonated the most because he's reminding you, just like Dwayne Wade reminded you, that there is no excuse whatsoever for any human being to go out there and harm another innocent human being. Police officers out there are human beings too. They bleed just like we do. They breathe just like we do. They have families and loved ones just like we do. More importantly, they swore to protect and to serve. And by and large, of the hundreds of thousands of police officers that are out there, we all know that 95 to 97% of them do the right things. But Chris Paul also said, but, to highlight that there are rogues everywhere, including amongst our law enforcement officials, and that ultimately something needed to be done about it, and obviously something needed to be said about it. Dwayne Wade said the same thing, because he ultimately came with the ultimate point. Violence has to stop. And LeBron James called for action on the part of all of us. Understand something. Understand what we should gather from what we witnessed last night at the 2016 ESPYs in Los Angeles, California. Under no circumstances are the athletes telling you to expect them to do everything themselves. They're calling on all of us to come together collectively. They obviously are willing to stand with us if we're willing to do so. And by the way, contrary to what most people will believe out there, they don't owe it to us to take these positions. It's nice that they do. We would prefer that they do it more often. We would prefer that they're conscientious observers and that they speak out with the power of their voice and their influence as much as they possibly can. But please be clear. They have no obligation to do it. If you're LeBron James and you're worth over $500 million, if you're Chris Paul and you're in the midst of a $107 million contract, if you're Carmelo Anthony who's pocketed over $200 million in his career, or Dwayne Wade who's done the same, you're going to be just fine. If that's what you're about. If all you're about is taking care of your family and your loved ones and yourself and living in your little cocoon, having elevated yourself above the impoverished and desolate background you come from, you're under no obligation to look back. It's just that if you got any kind of soul, how could you not? But the word obligation needs to be emphasized here because they're under no obligation to do this, which means we should appreciate it that much more when they take the opportunity to do so. When somebody like Chris Paul stands up and looks over at Jim Brown and reminds us all that because of people like him and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Muhammad Ali and others, why they're standing there today in the privileged position that they find themselves in. The Jim Browns of the world, the Kurt Floods of the world, the Jackie Robinsons of the world, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars of the world, the Muhammad Alis of the world, the Bill Russells of the world. The list goes on and on and on. Added substance and validity and credence to the argument that there is no success without a successor. And the fact that these dudes stood up on center stage last night and took the positions that they took, you got to tip your cap to them. It was exceptionally presented and delivered. It was rife with all the necessities. Preaching against violence, not just violence on the part of some police officers against individuals within the black community, but also reciprocating that violence against police officers is wrong. Killing one another is wrong. The innumerable murders in the streets of Chicago are wrong. In Detroit are wrong. In New Orleans are wrong. Something needed to be said. Something's been being said. And so now the question is, where do we go from here? First things first, in terms of what y'all thought about their opening last night and how it was handled. Secondly, how effective do you think it's going to be? Lastly, where do we go? See, when the Miami Heat donned hoodies after Trayvon Martin's killing by a wannabe cop, George Zimmerman, who ultimately got off, people don't realize they did their part then. What you want from the modern day athlete with a voice is for them to utilize it in a fashion that brings attention to the things that need to have attention brought to it. That's what you want from them. They're not lawyers. They're not judges. They're not police officers. They're not doctors. They're not teachers. They're not politicians. They're not legislators. There's only but so much they can do. All you want from them is a willingness to bring attention to things that need brought attention to it. So those who know better can do better by taking it from there and making the kind of noise and provoking the kind of changes necessary. The beauty of last night wasn't just what they did and what they elected to do, but how they went about doing it and the timing of it all. Because you see, it's on the eve of a town hall meeting tonight, hosted by ABC World News Tonight, David Muir, and ESPN's very own Jamel Hill from His and Hers. President Obama will be in attendance. It will be commercial free for an hour tonight. It's must-see television. If indeed we are a society who swears we care about what ails us. If we are those people, if we are truly what we swear we are as a nation, we'll watch, we'll listen, we'll learn, and more importantly, we'll act. We're in desperate times, ladies and gentlemen. I am telling you right now, I know people from Chicago who are moving out of the city because they are petrified that they're going to get hit by a stray bullet. We've regressed as a society. We've gotten worse. Part of the reason is because we never want to talk about things. The other part of the reason is because we never want to do anything about things. Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James did something about that last night. They instigated a discussion that can no longer be ignored. They put their face, their name, their brand, their cachet in the spotlight. And they've asked for helping hands along the way. Not black hands, not white hands, not Jewish hands, not Catholic hands, not Asian American hands, not Native American hands, not, Latino American hands or Latino hands. They asked for everybody. What you gonna do about it? What you gonna do? 888 Mad Dog 6 is always the number to call up. That's 888-623-3646. Whole bunch of stuff to get into today. I'm not going to even tell you what it is. Trust me, it's a lot more. And it ain't just on this subject. It's on the NBA. It's on the NFL. It's involving Commissioner Adam Silver. It's involving Kevin Durant. It's involving Paul Feinbaum and Nick Saban. It's involving a whole bunch of stuff. I'm just getting started. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on Sirius XM, Mad Dog Sports Radio, Channel 82. Holla at your boy with more in a minute.
Rediscover the revolutionary sound of 90s alternative, grunge, and crazy with Madison Mornings. Wake your butt up! And Sluggo in the afternoon.
And I am dressed like that kid from the Jungle Book.
Can't stop the spirits when they need you.
Oh, my loincloth has slipped.
.com era rock that never stops. Carefully curated and always commercial free. Sirius XM's Lithium. Channel 34 or anytime on your phone using the Sirius XM app.
I'm Nick Soboleski, a Select Quote agent with a true story that could save you hundreds of dollars a year. A woman named Linda just called. Her husband, Ray, has a $300,000 group life insurance policy, but is changing jobs and can't take it with him. Well, I impartially shopped the highly rated term life insurance companies we represent and found Ray, who is 41.
22 minutes past hour number 1, back in the Stephen A. Smith Show, Sirius XM, Mad Dog Sports Radio. With you until the top of the 3 o'clock hour when he passed off to the namesake for the channel, Christopher Mad Dog Russo, with his afternoon drive show. The number to call up as always is 888 Mad Dog 6. That's 888-623-3646. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Duck in Texas. You're live with Stephen A. on Mad Dog. What's up, Duck? Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Stephen A. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
Good to have you back safely from vacation. I'm glad you enjoyed your time off. I wanted to touch on a couple things. First of all, my sympathy goes out to you and your family in regards to your mother about what she's going through with cancer.
Thank you, man.
I heard you mention the Jimmy V Foundation. That is, it's a great cause, but I just wanted to share some knowledge with you because I know you pride yourself in knowing the facts. Unfortunately, our country has fallen victim to the dollar as it has for a long time.
Fallen victim to what? Fallen victim to what?
The dollar, the almighty dollar. The FDA has, repeatedly shot down any attempt to bring about the actual cure for cancer, which was found back in the 1930s. You can look that up for yourself. Unfortunately, the FDA will not allow any kind of holistic or natural cures for the disease because it would dampen their dollars on the multi-billion dollars that is pumped out through them for the drugs for the cancer. That's one of the main reasons why you don't find marijuana going legal in a lot of states, because it would dampen that also.
Okay. I got you. I got your point. A lot of people involved with holistic medication, they all say that. That's true. So that's how they feel anyway. But go ahead, continue.
Right. And you can also read up on how these holistic doctors and practitioners have come up dead after they have found this.
I don't want to go there, bro. I don't want to get sued or anything. I can't let you go on with that kind of stuff, because that's irresponsible on my part. I do get your message that a lot of people involved in holistic medications believe that the Food and Drug Administration could do things a bit differently. I'm not qualified to debate that, and I can't let you continue as if you're an expert on it. I'm not saying that you are or not. I'm just saying I don't know that. Your credentials haven't been vetted, so I'll let you make your point in regard to that, but I got to ask you to go on to another subject if you have it, because I can't let you continue to go on like that about the FDA. That's irresponsible, and I don't want to get myself in trouble, to be quite honest with you.
Okay, I appreciate that. The other topic is the way we need to bring about change in the country about what's going on nowadays is to hit them in the polls and to hit them in the pockets. That's the best way we can do. In order to bring about change.
I appreciate that, Doug, because listen, a lot of people, you got, like, for example, right now, you got a lot of people complaining about Donald Trump, or some complaining about Hillary Rodham Clinton. You know what's driving me crazy about that? We live in a society where all you have to do is make sure you don't vote for them. Why are people fighting? I'm not going to say why are people protesting, because I understand that's a part of our society, but the violence is incredibly unnecessary. All you have to do is make sure you don't vote for them. And then you don't have to worry about Donald Trump's impact. Simple. Just don't vote for him. That's it. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Or Hillary, for that matter. I'm not telling you who to pick or who to vote for. I'm simply saying we live in a society, a democratic society, where we have the right to eradicate people from their respective positions. One of the things that I love when I get an opportunity, because it's not every day, but when I get an opportunity to listen to the great Joe Madison, the Black Eagle on Urban View on Sirius XM, one of the first things he's asking people is, what you going to do about it? Because we live in a society where you can do something about it. And you can be lawful in doing something about it. Which means murder isn't necessary. Violence isn't necessary, etc. You don't need to do that. Just don't vote for them. Don't put them in positions of power where they can have that kind of influence. That's all. Simple. Very simple. Eli in Los Angeles. You're live at Stephen A. on Mad Dog. Eli, good afternoon. How you doing?
What's up, Stephen A.? How you doing, man?
I'm good. Talk to me.
Before I make my point about something that you said earlier, I just want to point out that Paul Feinbaum is clearly a bigoted racist. I'll never forget
Time out. That's not true. That I can't let that slide. I mean, I would hang up on you, Eli, but I'm gonna show you respect. Let me tell you something. Paul Feinbaum is one of the most fair-minded, decent guys you'll ever find in this business. He is a guy that calls it like he sees it. As Nick Saban will point out, he's an equal opportunist. If he agrees with you, whether you're white, black, or green, he's going to tell you. If he disagrees with you, he's going to tell you. Now, you might not like his point of view. You might disagree with him. But I can't allow you to be on here and to call that man a racist. That is not true. Paul Feinbaum is nothing like that. He's a good man. He's a good man, Eli. I'm being real with you. I know him. That is not true. That is not true.
Okay, Stephen A. Well, he did have a very awkward interaction with Bomani Jones, where he tried to explain to him about that he was more of a Southerner than Bomani Jones, and it just didn't make much sense.
Well, let me ask you this question. It didn't make any sense. So how come you can't just disagree with him without calling him a racist?
Well, as a conscious, intelligent black man, when I say that, what I'm really hoping that you will catch on to is the fact that I will be reading between the lines.
Well,
when I say that, I didn't understand that.
But I can tell that I get your intelligence. This is not the first time I've spoken to you, Eli. That's why I didn't hang up on you, bro. I got nothing but respect for you. But what I'm saying to you is that I don't want you. Can I respectfully say this to you, Eli? I don't want you to fall victim to the trap that a lot of us get caught up in when we don't agree with somebody and we're reading between the lines. There has to be racial animus or anything like that. If somebody is white and born and raised in Mississippi, right? I don't expect them to think like me. I expect them to be different. Now, I might not like what they say, Eli, but I'm not looking at them and saying, well, they're racist. Because you know what racism means to me? Number one, you think you are superior and somebody else is inferior because of one's ethnicity, culture, pigmentation, etc. But more importantly, because of it, you have disdain for them. And I'm saying to you, that's why we have to be careful not falling victim. You are a highly intelligent brother. I have spoken to you on several occasions. I know how fair-minded you are. I know how wise you are. That's why I didn't hang up on you. And I'm telling you that if you sat there, I would challenge you with this, Eli. Can you do me a favor? Sure. I want you to call up Paul Feinbaum's show. And I want you to tell him specifically that I asked you to call him. And what you told and what you thought he was and why. And then have a conversation with that man and call me back. I promise you, you won't hear a racist. I promise you.
Absolutely. I got one more quick point to make, though.
I'm going to let you make it. I'm going to let you make it. But I want you to call him up. Tell his producer, Stephen A. Smith specifically asked you to call him.
Okay.
And have a conversation with him, and then call me back after you have that conversation.
I can do that.
All right. Go ahead, bro. Make your second point.
Second point, the black community, we recognize you. We hold you in high regard. You can elocute yourself in a way that not many of us can. You achieved a great deal of success, and we respect you, Stephen A. But the conscious community, okay, I have a problem with a black man as highly as intelligent as yourself, who will mention the fact that. And let me make this, and I'm not trying to spew any type of vitriol towards you in any way.
I'm not taking Eli. I'm not taking it that way. Go ahead, make your point. I'm not taking it that way. Go ahead.
When you say things such as the fact that so many black men in Chicago, also Los Angeles, where I'm from, Louisiana, places like this, you mentioned about how black people are murdering each other in alarming rates. You're right. But when you do that without mentioning the cost, which is the fact, which is the war on drugs, the so-called war on drugs. Mm-hmm. Okay, Stephen A., are there any black gun or drug manufacturers? So
not that I know of. Not that I know of.
Into our communities. They're being filtered into our communities by the federal government, by white people, by white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And it's like it goes back to what Malcolm X used to say: the white man will sell you the liquor bottle and then lock you up for being drunk.
Eli, can I respond?
You mention the cause before you mention the effect, Stephen.
All right, hold on, Eli, calm down. I'm not hanging up on you, bro. I want you to stay right there. I want to respond to that, okay? Eli, you sound scarred. You sound hurt.
We are scarred.
Let me finish. My next sentence was, join the crowd. You ain't alone. If you listen to this show and a myriad of other shows, we do highlight the things that ail us as a community. We do highlight when they talk about the hip-hop industry, right? And they talk about Hollywood, right? And they talk about how, we got young brothers acting, et cetera, et cetera. But they don't talk about who's behind the scenes pulling the strings, manipulating stuff. We look at reality TV and how some of us in our community project ourselves. But we don't talk about the producers and the directors and the people behind the scenes manipulating and pulling these strings who don't look like us, that have the power. Those things are, and will continue to be articulated and presented. But what you have to understand is that there is a line drawn in the sand, because as a brother, you are talking to a brother, and you have to remember how we were raised. Our mamas, our fathers, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, they didn't raise us to be murderers. That dude that killed 5 police officers is a murderer. He is a murderer. Now, you could point to a lot of things that ail us as a society, and we have to work through that. And your points are valid, Eli, but you don't use that to in any way try to justify what that man did. I called him a coward, and I should have called them worse. And I'm a person, to be fair and honest, I have to work on being more sensitive. I have to work on coming across as somebody who's a bit more sensitive. A lot of times I'm a bit acerbic. I'm straight. I'm in your face. I tell it like I see it and what have you. And I have no regard for how the other side feels, because all I'm thinking about is the fact that I'm telling the truth. Well, sometimes it ain't just about the truth. It's about how you make people feel. And I'm genuinely trying to work on getting better as a man and as a human being in that regard. But I ain't going to apply it to this dude. You killed 5 police officers, 5 human beings who have families. And I don't care what color they are. I don't care what their ethnicity is. I don't care how they might have offended somebody or irritated somebody or whatever the case may be, even though that don't apply here, Eli, because the shootings were in Baton Rouge. Okay? And someplace other than Dallas. Minneapolis, rather. Dallas didn't have anything to do with that, but it happened in Dallas. That's an individual that was looking for an excuse to murder somebody. We can't do that, Eli. And I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate where you're coming from. I thank you for the call. But I want you to understand that when you call up here, in the midst of your frustration, understand that you have an obligation to be careful about what you're lamenting, because there are other young minds out there. You can't come across as acting as if it's okay. And I'm not saying you did that, but I'm saying to you, you can't be worried about how a murderer is classified when they're a murderer. They're a murderer. I'm telling you to use that argument for somebody else, not for a man that murdered 5 police officers. Can we at least agree on that, Eli?
We can agree on that.
That's all I'm saying.
But we can agree on that. I just want you to be you yourself, to be cognizant of the psychological, systemic damage that has been done.
But wait a minute, Eli. Wait a minute. Eli, you called up on this show and acknowledged that I'm respected. Would I be respected if I didn't tackle these issues? I mean, let me give you a list of my friends. Listen, I talked to Joe Madison. I talked to Karen Hunter. I talked to Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. I talked to Mark Lamont Hill. I talked to my man Warren Ballantyne all the time. Jesse Jackson, Reverend Al Sharpton, they know me. We've spoken on many occasions. Dr. Harry Edwards, Jim Brown. The list goes on and on and on. How many battles do you want me to fight? I must be fair, Eli. I love my people. I'm a black man and I'm proud of it. But my God, I also love people. I'm a human being. They're human beings. And if they've been, I can't sit up here and in any way make excuses for a black man that murdered 5 police officers. I'm not doing it. He's a murderer. But I do understand what you're saying, Eli. I gotta go. I appreciate your call. I will continue to be cognizant of it. All I'm saying to you is you called up here and acknowledged that you respect me for a reason. Evidently, I'm willing to tackle these issues. I'm not running, but I will always be fair. I love my people. I am a proud black man, but I also love people. Period. I don't care what color, what ethnicity, what your cultural background is. No one has the right to have violence inflicted upon them, and no one should be murdered. Ever. This is Stephen A. Smith Show, Sirius XM Mad Dog Sports Radio. Back with more in a minute.
Mad Dog Sports Radio. Sports Bite.
It's the first round of the Open, and Phil Mickelson had a chance to post a first-ever score of 62 in 157 years of major championship history, but he just missed it and settled for 63.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show.
$45 minutes past hour. Number one, back here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, Sirius XM, Mad Dog Sports Radio. Listen, I'll get into Paul Feinbaum and Nick Saban in hour number two, along with Adam Silver, the commissioner of the National Basketball Association, talking about the power structure within the NBA. Right now, we've been talking about Carmelo Anthony, CP3, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James cold open at last night's ESPYs, which obviously has provoked a lot of emotions from the callers. Eli seems very, very upset, very angry. Ladies and gentlemen, in all likelihood, it's justified. You know, it wasn't me demeaning Eli in any way, and I'm sure that Eli didn't take it that way because he's a frequent caller to the show. It was me essentially trying to talk him off that ledge. You got some young men out here, particularly African-American men, that are ticked off because of the things that are transpiring, and it's very, very personal to a lot of us. And I just wanted to make sure that I tried to talk Eli off that ledge. He's smart. He's conscientious. And as long as he hones in that anger, that disgust, he's going to do a lot of good. And I hope he's listening, because I got love for you, brother, and I hear where you're coming from. I truly, truly do. But that guy that murdered 5 police officers, that's exactly what he is. He's a murderer. He's a coward. I'm not going to say I hope he rots in hell, because that ain't my place. But I ain't going to cry if he is. Back to the phones we go at 888 Mad Dog 6. That's 888-623-3646. Let's go to Paul in New York. He's a police officer in New York. You're live with Stephen A. on Mad Dog. Good afternoon, Paul. How are you?
Stephen A., I'm fine. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for calling.
First thing, before I say anything else, my mother passed away 7 years ago. And the way you speak about your mother is the way I used to speak about mine, and I still do.
Where's your mom? Where are you from? Where's your mama from?
No, we're Jamaican. My mother passed away 7 years ago.
My mother's from St. Thomas,
Virgin Islands.
Yes.
I know. Yeah, I know you, Stephen A. I know you.
I got you.
And I have a ton of respect for you. But the respect that I have for you, for the way that you speak about your mother and treat your mother, that overrides every other respect that I have. I am honored to hear you speak about your mother that way.
Thank you.
And I pray for you and your family.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Now, usually I call up and speak about boxing, but, in light of everything, I'll speak about something else. I'm a black man, black police officer who works in a black neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Very, very difficult. Mm-hmm. Very difficult. But I want to bring up one instance to you, which happened a few years ago. And there was a 12-year-old young black child, 12 years old, walking through an alleyway and walking toward me in my unmarked vehicle and holding what appeared to me to be a rifle. And I was in the car with 2 other officers, and we all exited the vehicle. And the rifle was pointed up, or what appeared to be a rifle was pointed up. And I said, this can't be real. And it was maybe about 4 p.m., right? 4 or 5 p.m. And I said to him, I called to him and said, listen, hello, to get his attention to see how he would react. And I said, what do we have there? What do we have today? And I said, keep it pointed up. Don't point it at me. Keep it pointed up. What do we have? And he said, oh, officer, how you doing? How you doing? Just for my video game. And if I didn't take that extra second to ask him that, and maybe to speak to him a certain way, I don't know what could have happened. Mm. I didn't think to shoot him, but I thought it could be a gun. Understood. I have children also. I have sons also. And my instinct was that he could have been one of them. Stephen A., no matter how much training we receive, and I've been an officer now for 12 years. I've received a ton of training. No matter how much training that we receive, one thing they cannot train you out of is fear. And if you are afraid of black men, you're going to continue to be afraid of black men.
Okay, let me ask you this, Officer Paul, a police officer in New York City. He's on the phone with me right now, ladies and gentlemen. Real quick, Paul, based on what you just said, then what's the solution? Because you can't, in other words, you can't train someone to eradicate the fear from themselves. Every police officer can't be black. So, so what are you saying? What can be done?
That is something that they have to work on within themselves, Stephen. Because, you know, everybody has the same power and people can use it how they use it. Whether it's going to be for discretion, you know, I mean, having more discretion, whatever people choose to do. You know, there's a patrol guide, there's common sense, there's discretion, but if you're scared, you're scared. You know, you as a sports expert, you know that you have two teams or you have two fighters or whatever you have, they have the same rules, the same equipment. They're not all going to be the same. And sometimes you say the heart gets snatched out of you. If you come to work when that heart is already snatched out of you, that's a problem.
Got it.
That's a problem.
Mr. Officer,
and
go ahead.
There's a lot. I'm sorry, there's a lot that just has to be done on both ends. But we'll talk another day.
Paul, thank you for the call, buddy. I always appreciate it. Feel free to call back anytime. Let's go to Dean in Minnesota. You're live with Stephen A. on Mad Dog. Dean, good afternoon.
Stephen A., first time, long time. Appreciate you talking about this, and I just appreciate you in general.
Thank you.
There was something that Commissioner Silver actually said that I really appreciated, and I really enjoyed it when he said it. Okay. He used the term multidimensional when he was talking about athletes, particularly NBA athletes. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about the four young brothers who said what they said yesterday at the ESPYs, all four of those guys are fathers. They're all married. They're all actively involved with their children. And when we talk about, particularly African-American men, I feel like one of the biggest raps that exists for us is people don't understand and appreciate the fact that we are multidimensional. We're sons, we're fathers, we're uncles, we're taxpayers, we're lawyers, accountants, any number of different things, not just, this nameless, faceless, one-dimensional black man. And so when we talk about issues that relate to, who we are and what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, also something that you alluded to with Paul, when you start talking about solutions, I feel like one of the biggest things that we have to arrive at as a society, whether it be police interacting with African-American men, whether it be, African-Americans interacting with, people of a Caucasian background, is to understand that we are multidimensional, that not every white person is a racist, not every black man is a thug and a criminal, but that we're individual people and we have shared humanity. And unless and until we get to a place where we can understand and see that shared humanity and put that first, we're in trouble.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Dean, I appreciate the call, man. Thank you so much. Very, very good point. You can't look at people and characterize them, put them in a box, and think that you can judge a book by its cover, and that's okay. When Martin Luther King talked about judging ones by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, that's essentially what he was alluding to. White police officers can't do that. You can't just sit up there and ignore the potential content of one's character and just think and stigmatize them by the color of their skin. The flip side to it is that they have a job where their lives are on the line, and in a split second delay could cost them their lives. Like Paul in New York, the police officer, tons and tons and tons of training. He was willing to take a chance on that split second because that was a young kid and he didn't want to smoke him. So he gave him an opportunity, and thank God he did. My man Warren Valentine always points out how cops need to live in the communities they police. A lot of people say that all the time. My attitude is whether you live there or not, know the community that you're policing. If you don't live in the neighborhood, work that beat so you know as many people as you possibly can. That's just me. Bilal in New York. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Is it Bilal or Bilal?
It's Bilal.
Bilal. All right. There's the I as the E. How you doing, Bilal? How's everything?
I'm good. And I called to say this because I usually agree with 95% of the things you say.
Mm-hmm.
But I take issue with the way you're calling that man. He is a murderer. The way you're calling that man a coward, because I don't hear as much vitriol toward police officers who shot the man in the back, clearly in South Carolina, the ones who choked the man on camera in Staten Island.
You don't hear as much vitriol from who?
From media or you.
I got to admit,
I've never heard you call those cops cowards, and the cops always have this presumption of innocence.
Stop right there. Let me apologize. I called them murderers. So if you want to be particular about the fact that I should have called them cowards, I apologize, because especially that police officer that shot the guy in the back in South Carolina. I mean, does it get any more cowardly than that? And then trying to cover it up? So you're absolutely right. You know, I'm just, but when it happened, we absolutely spoke about it on many, many occasions right on this show.
Yeah, I've heard you speak. I heard you speak on it, definitely.
Yeah.
But I just took issue. I said, well, listen, where's all the vitriol toward the officers who commit these heinous crimes?
But let me also say this. It goes a bit steeper with police officers in this respect. You're law enforcement officials. You've sworn to protect and serve. And when you kill what we perceive to be innocent individuals, it doesn't get more cowardly or more murderous than that. So you're absolutely right. But there have been a couple of occasions, A, when there's been a debate about how innocent the situation was when a cop is confronted, and B, and more importantly, most of us acknowledge and are willing to admit, Bilal, that more than 95% of the police officers out there just doing their job.
I disagree. I don't think it's 95%.
Well, you're first. I must admit that. You do. You know why I respect where you're coming from? Because what you're saying, I can't dispute what you believe. You're saying you don't believe that. That's fair. Most people do. Because when something goes down, what you doing? You dialing 911 in most instances. You might not, but you got to admit most people would.
I'm born and raised in Harlem, Stevie. Let me say this. I'm born and raised in Harlem.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I've seen where people...
I got 20 seconds left, Bilal, so go ahead. The final 20 seconds is yours.
I see people call for help in my community, and they get treated like the criminal also. You're calling for help, and the police in Harlem are more aggressive and combative against people who call for their help.
You're right. I got to run, but you're right about that, because I've seen situations when I was in Harlem, and that has happened. Happened to my father when he owned a department store, a drugstore. So you're absolutely right. I get where you're coming from, but not all police officers are that way.
When it's time to go to the track, the race is on. SiriusXM NASCAR Radio's got you covered. Okay, ready to roll here. Tune in to SiriusXM NASCAR Radio online. SiriusXM.
Hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show, here with you until the top of the 3 o'clock hour, when I pass it off to the namesake for the channel, Christopher Mad Dog Russo, with his afternoon drive show right here on SiriusXM. Mad Dog Sports Radio, 888 Mad Dog 6 is always the number to call up. That's 888-623-3646. Couple of items I wanted to get to before I get back to the phones. By the way, on a political note, it looks like Donald Trump is going to go with Governor Pence out of Indiana as his vice presidential candidate. Apparently his children, that's who they want him to go with, and he's following their lead. I imagine Chris Christie, governor from New Jersey, didn't get the nod, even though he's one of the first, if not the first, to come out and endorse and support Donald Trump. I imagine he didn't get the VP nod because of that George Washington Bridge scandal. Probably make him Secretary of Defense or something like that. Who knows? It'd probably be Christie with something like that, but we'll see. Nevertheless, Tim Tebow and Dana White, president for the UFC, are both scheduled speakers at next week's Republican National Convention in Cleveland, Ohio. Tim Tebow and Dana White. I have nothing to say about that because I actually like both of them. Both of them are good guys. Both of them are conscientious. Dana White is obviously a capitalist, and Tim Tebow is as conservative as they come. I may get on Tim Tebow about his inability to throw the football, and I'll never waver on that. But he is a good guy. Tim Tebow's a good man. And if he wants to spout his views, that is his right. I can tell you this much, it won't be anything incendiary. He hates on no one. He's a good dude. I'm proud of him, and I wish him nothing but the best. Adam Silver, transitioning to another subject, had some things to say in the aftermath of Kevin Durant going to Golden State. Obviously, with Kevin Durant deciding to make that move, a lot of people had a problem with Kevin Durant leaving OKC. I had an issue with him going to the team that beat him. Apparently, Adam Silver had an issue with him, and not an issue with him, but the balance of power. You want as much parity as possible, and obviously parity ain't a part of the equation when you talk about the NBA next season, because it's Golden State, it's San Antonio, maybe a little bit of the Clippers and Cleveland, and nobody else. Let's just call it what it is. And that concerns Commissioner Adam Silver. But rather than put words into his mouth, let's hear from the commissioner himself about what he feels exactly about Kevin Durant and his willingness to go to the Golden State Warriors. Play that for me, Nuno.
And I've read several stories suggesting that that's something that the league wants, this notion of two super teams, that it's a huge television attraction. I don't think it's good for the league, just to be really clear. And, I will say whoever's the prohibitive favorite, try telling that to the 430 other players who aren't on those two teams. We have the greatest collection of basketball players in the world in our league, and so I'm not making any predictions, but there's no question when you aggregate a group of great players, they have a better chance of winning than many other teams. On the other hand, there's lots of things that have to happen. We'll see what happens in Golden State. You had a great chemistry among a group of players, and you're adding another superstar to the mix. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But just to be absolutely clear, I do not think that's ideal.
Obviously, there were those that had a dissenting opinion. One of them happened to be Mark Cuban, the owner for the Dallas Mavericks. Listen to what he had to say.
Golden State looked pretty loaded already as it was, and now they get Durant. Does that make the Dallas Mavericks sort of say, okay, we're done, we can't win?
No, of course not. I always say, we're just 4 broken ankles away from being the best team in the league. But super teams have a tough time. One of the beauties of the Warriors last year was the depth and the strength of their bench, right? Guys didn't have to play 40 minutes. They didn't have to play 30 minutes a lot of times. And now they're going to have to recreate that. And I wouldn't be shocked, just like when we saw LeBron go to Miami with D-Wade and Chris Bosh, they started off like 11 and 10, and there was a lot of dissension. It wouldn't shock me if that's the way Golden State started off.
It's going to take some time. You got a dominant scorer in Kevin Durant playing with a guy that holds the basketball a lot, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, one of the best shooters.
But Steve Kerr's smart. He's a great coach, right?
Absolutely.
And they'll have enough confidence in their team that I think they're going to let them make a lot of mistakes and go through some pain early on, and then we'll see what happens. So hopefully we play them a lot early.
Get those 4 out of the way.
Get them out of the way.
It's going to be interesting, but look, I don't like it myself. I agree with Adam. We don't have enough stars to go around, and when they start joining up, we're going to have 22 teams that are unwatchable.
They are working within the rules.
No,
I'm not. They have the right to do it.
Hey, if that would have come to Dallas, I would have been very happy.
Absolutely.
Right?
You take all 4 of those guys, wouldn't you?
In a heartbeat,
and then Dirk will be the 5. You'd be okay.
I'd be okay.
The actual point that I liked most was the one made by John Barry, because he prefaced his dissent for Kevin Durant going to Golden State by saying, we have but so many stars in the league as it is. If they start joining up, blah, 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 blah. John's right. That's a cause for concern. If they start joining up with one another as opposed to wanting to compete against one another. He's absolutely right. But in terms of what Adam Silver said, there is cause for concern. I got to admit to you, I am looking forward to Golden State and Cleveland meeting again for the championship next year. The trilogy. I have no reason to believe that anybody else is getting in their way. DeAndre Jordan still can't hit free throws in L.A. And who knows how healthy Blake Griffin is going to be. And every other week you're talking about him being on the trading block. In San Antonio, I think picking up Pau Gasol was a huge deal. Because as great as Tim Duncan was, and we all know he's a future first ballot Hall of Famer, should be a unanimous pick. Greatest power forward in the history of the game. Great guy, by the way. He wasn't that way his last year. And I appreciated him acknowledging it just wasn't fun anymore for him. Because it looked that way. When you got to ice your knees and wear those knee bandages, and I mean, he could barely get up off the floor. I understand. But am I supposed to believe that the LaMarcus Aldridge that averaged 40 in the first 2 games against OKC and then after that looked so flagrantly average that him, Gasol, and Kawhi Leonard are going to be enough to beat Golden State next year? No, I don't believe that. So, and we know there ain't nobody in the Eastern Conference that's going to be Cleveland. What, because Toronto kept DeMar DeRozan? Really? So you got that going on. So clearly Golden State and Cleveland are on a collision course. Why watch anybody else? That's basically what Adam Silver's saying. I get that. Now, Mark Cuban's not going to say that because he's an owner. And he's a competitor. And he's got to believe that his team has a chance. But deep within the crevices of his soul, you got Harrison Barnes and Andrew Bogut. With a 38-year-old Dirk Nowitzki. Where you going? Home. That's where you going. No disrespect. Rick Carlisle's a great coach. Harrison Barnes can play. I've gained more and more respect for Andrew Bogut throughout the years. But they ain't winning a championship. So what do you have? And then to make matters worse, nothing but respect for Mike Conley. But I don't want to hear Mike Conley and $153 million in the same sentence. I ain't knocking him for getting the money. I would have taken it too. But I hope they're ready for the league to bow out of this collective bargaining agreement and provoke a renegotiation next summer. I hope they're ready for the potential to be locked out. If I were LeBron James, I'd go get my $200+ million right now. Right now. Might not be there for him next summer. All of this money. Something wasn't worked out. Because I'm telling you right now, as a guy that covered the league for the last 20 years, they did not mean for the Mike Conley Jr.'s of the world to get $153 million. Not these owners. They did not mean for DeMar DeRozan to get $139 million. They did not mean for Bradley Beal to get $128 million. I promise you that. I promise you that. They did not mean for that to happen. If I were LeBron James, I'd go get my money right now. Right now. Because even though a lockout wouldn't be in anybody's best interest, understand that the owners still have the deals with the networks. They're going to get paid no matter what. They're going to get paid. It's the players that might be in danger. 888 Mad Dog 6 is the number to call up. That's 888-623-3646. It's just the truth. Another item I wanted to get into, changing subjects again, was Nick Saban and Paul Feinbaum getting into it yesterday. I don't know if that was SEC Media Day, whatever the hell it was. I'm still getting back into the mix, ladies and gentlemen. It was SEC Media Day. Paul Feinbaum, in case you didn't know, a couple of Alabama players got arrested a few weeks ago. They weren't thrown off the team, suspended, or anything like that. And Paul Feinbaum asked Nick Saban about it. And it became very, very, very contentious. I ain't going to get too much, but I wanted to play that sound because that caller in hour number one who called up and, tried to call Paul Feinbaum names, I said, call him. Talk to him. Tell him I told you to call. Have a conversation with him and then come back and tell me you think he's a racist. Paul Feinbaum's a good man. He's just straight up. He doesn't play games. He's going to tell you exactly where he stands and exactly how he feels. That's why I love him. No pretense, no BS. It's Paul Feinbaum. Agree with him, disagree with him. But nobody's going to be allowed to call up here and sully his name and his character because you don't like what he had to say. Because I find him to be very even-handed and straight up no matter who he is. This is a man that's interviewed Nick Saban one-on-one. This is a man that's talked to Nick Saban privately. This is a man that is the quintessential preeminent voice of the SEC football conference in America. Nobody else is more renowned in terms of their affiliation with the SEC than him, to my knowledge, at this moment in time. And the Paul Feinbaum that I listen to is incredibly even-handed. I treasure the man. I'm not going to lie. I'm one of his biggest fans. Here's a taste as to why that is. This is Paul Feinbaum yesterday with Nick Saban.
Coach, to a lot of people, that's a very bad look for your program, that you're working out internally but not suspending them publicly for an important game against Southern Cal. How do you answer those critics?
Well, I don't really care to answer the critics because I'm going to do what's right for the players. And if the players really did anything that wrong, they would have got charged with something. All right, so
well, I mean,
just because they got arrested,
that's debatable if you listen to what the district attorney said in his simply unintelligent response.
Didn't say what all was. Like, there were 4 people in the car. Why did the 2 football players get arrested and the other guys not get arrested? All right, there's no law about concealed weapons in Louisiana. Is that right, Marcus? You're from Louisiana. All right, so why did they search the car just because there was a gun on the seat?
Do you think they were persecuting the football players?
I don't. There's just a lot of questions there that are reasons that there weren't charges brought against these guys. Now, we're going to do do we condone the behavior? No. All right, but you're innocent until proven guilty in this country, regardless of whether you get convicted in the media or not, which is what you're doing to these players.
I'm not convicting anyone. I'm just asking you why you are not going to suspend Cam Robinson for the Southern Cal.
Because I'm not going to convict him in the public. And you said that I was going to get criticized by you and the public and the media because I'm not going to suspend him. And I don't really care about that. It's the end of the conversation.
Okay, fair enough.
Now, see, this is a tough situation for me. Because I just described to you how I feel about Paul Feinbaum. But y'all know I love me some Nick Saban. Because he's straight up. See, to me, Nick Saban and a Paul Feinbaum, individuals like them, personify and epitomize all that's right about the world that we live in. And I'll tell you why. Because they don't get caught up in, oh, I have to say it just right, so you may not be offended. They're not trying to offend you. And that's one of the things that I have to work on. I just had a talk with one of my best friends in the world. And because I'm so straight up and direct, people interpret that as me intentionally trying to be acerbic and disrespectful. No. I genuinely don't mean to hurt anybody. I don't take the time to pretend. I'm just going to give it to you straight. But I don't mean to offend. I just speak factually. When I said that I thought that Kevin Durant committed a weak move by going to the team that beat him, I meant it. I did not mean Kevin Durant is weak. I did not mean he's a bad guy. I did not mean he's a punk. I did not mean he's not good for the league. I did not mean he's not a superstar. I just meant that move I thought was weak. That's it. But we live in a society where people have taken that and used it as a headline and attach something far more incendiary and far more significant to it. And I've just come to the point where I'm going to be real, but I do have a responsibility to exert a bit more sensitivity. And I'm going to work to do that. But when I look at Paul Feinbaum and Nick Saban, both are a breath of fresh air. Because Nick Saban said, you're convicting them because you're saying you're going to criticize me if I don't do what you think I should do, and I don't care about that. End of discussion. He's a 5-time national champion. He's the greatest coach in college football as far as I'm concerned. He's an institution. I never thought in my wildest dreams there would be anybody that would ever succeed the great Paul Bear Bryant. It has happened in Tuscaloosa. It has happened with Nick Saban. You talk to me about Bear Bryant all you want to. I'm rolling with Nick Saban. And I applaud and respect his honesty. But make no mistake about it, I applaud and respect Paul Feinbaum's honesty. And the fact that he didn't back down one bit, because he was reminding you that he is in the media and he does have an obligation to ask these questions. And him asking the question is not convicting Nick Saban or his players. Now, to me, what would make it perfect is that if we saw them together in a day or so, like nothing happened. Because that's how it should be. You got one position, I have another. We adamantly disagree, so what? I'm about to start doing First Take with Max Kellerman on July 25th. I hope y'all all be there. I've always had love for Max Kellerman. I think he's a great talent. I think he's smart. He's quick on his feet. He comes right at you. And he's unapologetic with his positions. And he's honest. I've always been cool with Max because of that. And there's going to be times when we're going at it on First Take. So, ain't going to stop me from shaking that brother's hands before every show or giving him a pound or a fist pump. It ain't going to stop me from looking after him when the show's not on the air. That's my man. Just like Skip was my man. It's okay to disagree. Just so long as we're not contentiously disagreeable. Our president, Barack Obama, has tried to teach us that on many occasions. I think he's right about that. Whether he practiced what he preached on Capitol Hill, going up against the GOP and all of that stuff, it's a subject for others to debate. But he was right about what he said. And we should all learn from that. 888 Mad Dog 6 is always the number to call up. That's 888-623-3646. Back to your phone calls in a minute with Stephen A. on Mad Dog.
This is former Yankee Steve Sachs. On August 21st, you can help strike out cancer at Yankee Stadium. Register today for the Run-In 5K, a unique run walk that uses the stadium as its course. Navigate the concourses, ramps, and stairs, and take your own victory laps around the warning track that circles the field. All proceeds support innovative research funded by the Damon Runyon Cancer Research Foundation.
24 minutes past hour number 2, back here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, Sirius XM Mad Dog Sports Radio. Back to the phones we go at 888 Mad Dog 6. That's 888-623-3646. Let's go to Tony in New York. You're live with Stephen A. on Mad Dog. Tony, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Roll up your window, bro. We could barely hear you because your window's a lot of wind in the background.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to say something about Adam Silver, what he just said with that replay that you did.
Yep.
I don't believe what he's saying, because if he didn't get involved in those playoffs by making certain calls, decisions, maybe with Golden State winning the championship, Durant would have never went there. And in the OKC series, when Draymond was supposed to get suspended, he didn't. Maybe Durant would have made it to the finals, and he would never went to Golden State.
Well, you could put that. You could put it on that, and I don't think you're wrong. But what I would say to you is, I do think that your thought is not complete, because one could easily come back and say, didn't Kevin Durant have more of a determination in that regard than Adam Silver? He was the one playing.
Yeah, he did.
He was the one playing.
Yeah, he did. But he's the one that's playing. Yeah, he could have taken care of it himself to play and play better. Yeah, but Adam Silver now said he's trying to make a competitive balance and all of this. He knows that the TV rights paid a lot of money, so they had to make money for the TV.
Well, again,
So
you can say that, but the Oklahoma City Thunder were up 3-1 and lost.
It was.
And that's where you lose me. I'm not saying that your points are ill-conceived. I'm saying they're short-sighted because the ultimate underlying point was the fact that Kevin Durant had a 3-1 lead in the Western Conference Finals and lost it.
Yeah, you're right about that. But I figure if Golden State would have won, I don't think you would have went there.
My man.
I think how many
different ways do I have to say this to you, Tony? I get that. But who prevented that from happening more than Kevin Durant?
He didn't step up to the plate.
There you go. That's what it comes down to. That ultimately is the overlying factor. That's it. That's it. Appreciate the call. Let's go to Robert in Minnesota. You're live with Stephen A. on Mad Dog Sports Radio. Good afternoon, Robert. How are you?
Fine. How are you doing today? Good afternoon. I called about the issue that I was listening to the officer that was on earlier. I'm a police officer as well, black man, and I live in a predominantly one ethnic group that presides over me. And I was just thinking about this because we're not unionized. We're not a police department that has a union. So, for instance, if I make a tough decision in anything I do, that's my job on the line. That's me.
Why don't y'all have a union? What's that about?
It's a unique situation. I work on an Indian reservation, so a lot of us aren't unionized. It's real different compared to outside in different cities. But a lot of these cities, they have those unions. So those police officers, they kind of, not that it's a crutch, but some of the incidents that happen, I think they have that union to fall back on. So they're not being penalized more than if something happens, they can go to a union, and that union representative is supposed to support them. Wrong, different, and other. So it's just a real unique situation. Whereas if I made the same choices that some officers make on the outside of my, my particular position, I'm held to a higher standard. So I gotta really mind my P's and Q's over decisions.
So you're basically saying that officers that fall under the purview of unions are more protected than non-union police officers, which is why they should be exercising what, more or less caution? What do you mean?
I think they don't use as much caution as they should.
Because they know they have the protection of the union.
Because they know they have the protection of their union.
Got it.
And that's a real, scary. I don't know. I
got it. I understand, Robert, and I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. I feel bad for your situation. Get with a union. Shoot. That's just basically my belief. Brandon in San Antonio, you're live at Stephen A. on Mad Dog. Brandon, good afternoon.
What's going on, Stephen A?
I'm good. Talk to me.
Got a question for you. Say like everything worked out with KD and like Golden State, and it be the Cavs and like Golden State in the finals for the next 2 years. Will you not gonna hold that against LeBron's legacy if he were to fall to Golden State due a super team?
I'm not going to hold it against LeBron. I think LeBron has cemented his legacy as the greatest small forward to have ever played the game. Is arguably one of the top 5 players in the history of basketball. I just think that LeBron is sensational, and he has proven it. And this last one, where he ended up stepping up the way that he did and delivering an NBA championship to the city of Cleveland for the first time in 52 years, that cemented it all, bro. It's a wrap.
Right.
It's a wrap.
I know a lot of people be saying, I guess was his little career in the finals versus Jordan. They probably try to give him a hard time.
Well, I'm not going to give him the edge over Jordan because 6 for 6 with 6 NBA Finals MVPs is what it is. But that doesn't mean that LeBron's legacy is anything to sneeze at. He's one of the greatest players in the history of basketball. It cannot be denied.
All right.
Take it easy, bro. No problem. James in Florida, you're live with Stephen A. on Mad Dog. What's up, James? How are you?
Hey, what's going on, Steve? Man, hey, man, look, man, you're a basketball aficionado, I would say, and I'm shocked with you with the Alan Silver talk about the competitive balance and things of that sort. I think it's a bunch of nonsense and just foolishness as far as I'm concerned. It's just something he wants to get up and talk about.
Oh, you talking about Adam Silver?
Yes, because
Okay.
let me throw something out there to you. You know basketball. You probably know it much better than I do. I remember there was a time when Kareem left Milwaukee after winning the championship and went to the L.A. Lakers. I remember Moses Malone on a formidable Houston Rocket team that he couldn't get out of the West, go and join with Dr. J to win a title. I remember Adrian Dantley and Mark Aguirre not being able to make it. And these were bona fide superstars on their teams. Left their teams to join the Detroit Pistons to win a title. Okay? I remember DJ. Dennis Johnson, a star in Seattle.
Well, James, let me tell you, I get where you're coming from, but let me tell you where you're a bit off with your thinking. All of those things happened, but you also have to remember it was at a time when you were trying to build the league. You remember when David Stern took over, 82, 83? You remember that the NBA Finals was on tape delay.
That's true. That is true.
So, in other words, it wasn't what the league will never admit it. They'll never confess to it. But the fact that it was Boston and L.A. going at one another was great for the sport. And so what happened is Houston with the Twin Towers and Ralph Sampson and Olajuwon interrupted the proceedings by getting to the finals one time and losing to Boston, okay? And then you had, the Detroit Pistons ultimately interrupted the proceedings, knocking off the Celtics. Dr. J and Moses Malone and those boys intervened. But what you had was number one, a few teams who were formidable, but also they were trying to build the popularity of the NBA in the big markets like Boston versus LA, white versus black, Bird versus Showtime, the blue collar Celtics versus the Showtime Lakers. All of that elevated the level of appeal. But now with the advent of social media and the reach that professional athletes have and how the sport has been globalized, you have more people interested, which elevates the need for more parity. Because before, you were just trying to get people interested in the sport. And if they had to root for one or two teams, that was fine. Now, everyone's interested in the sport. And you can't leave people out by having a power crew or two. And everybody else is left in the dust. That's why Adam Silver has a different position than what you were alluding to, James, back in the 80s. Let's go to Stephen in Kentucky. You're live with Stephen A. on Mad Dog. What's up, Stephen?
Hey, how you doing, Stephen A?
I'm good.
I was just calling in reply to two officers that called in, and I kind of disagree with them a little bit because I think most of the problems that happen between African Americans and police in their communities is due to training. I'm a soldier, active duty soldier, and I've been deployed 2 different combat zones. And I would say that in those combat zones, we deal with combatants who walk around with AK-47s all the time. But just because they have a weapon doesn't mean that we actually shoot them. I think if they're actually trained on how to deal with people in those communities, training is the key because, you can be in a situation in which someone has a gun, may or may not have a gun, and you still don't have to take that person's life. And I think that the majority of our police force are not actually trained the correct way.
Okay, so what kind of training do you think they should receive, sir?
Well, I wouldn't say more as a military type training, but I would think that, if you're going to be in these urban communities, which are the crime rate in most urban communities are higher than, crime rates communities across the world. But the thing is, you have to know the actual individuals in those communities that you're policing. And that's one of the problems that we have. The police doesn't know the actual individuals in those communities. So you have a bunch of maybe, say, white cops coming in and they're policing African American communities. And to them, most of the African Americans are all look alike and say they're all thugs and somewhat say. So you have this, well, he has a gun, he doesn't have a gun. And that's the training that I'm actually talking about is that actually this is the type of training that you actually have to do with as disarming combatants. You don't have to kill someone to disarm them. And I've seen several videos in which you see officers killing people
You know what? I get your point with that because, like, for example, the guy that got killed, I'm not even talking about the shooting in Minnesota because he's in the car. His 4-year-old child is behind him. His fiance is next to him. We all know that was inexcusable. But Sterling in Baton Rouge, one officer was on his lower extremities. The other officer had his knee on his head. How in God's name do you need to shoot that man? How in God's name do you need to shoot him?
Exactly.
No excuse.
And that's just my point. And I appreciate you taking my call. And I just want to say your mother, she's in my prayers, and God bless.
Thank you. God bless you for saying that. Thank you so much, bro. I appreciate it. 888 Mad Dog 6 is always the number to call up. Just 888-623-3646. More with Stephen A. By the way, got a tweet from Bill Simmons. Well, he didn't, I guess he was taking a jab at me or something like that. I'll respond in a minute. It's Stephen A. on Mad Dog.
Mad Dog Sports Radio. Sports Bite.
First round of golf's British Open, and Phil Mickelson with a stellar performance.
10-footer, and this to get to 7 under par. Got the claw grip, sends the ball out to the left.
Turning right and in. Phil Mickelson.
On HBO, put a tweet out about me. I don't know when it was. I think it was today sometimes. And I had a tweet where I put in there Tom Brady was arrogant, uppity, selfish, and in the end he brought this on himself. Bill Simmons responds, one of multiple ESPN employees used by the NFL to leak anti-Brady info during his saga decides to weigh in. So be it. Bill Simmons can believe what he wants. I respect the hell out of him. I actually miss him being at the network, to be quite honest with you. He has his opinion. My only thing is this. Why does my opinion have to come from the NFL? That's the only thing how come it can't come from me? Ladies and gentlemen, on the day after Tom Brady and Deflategate took place, I said, I think it's much ado about nothing. But don't tell me he didn't know anything. The day after. I need to speak to the NFL for that. I can't deduce that if you're the quarterback and you have the ball snapped to you and you hand it off to the running back and you're the one that throws it to the receivers and the tight ends and nobody touches the football more than you. And we're talking about a star NFL quarterback, that the footballs are deflated in a certain way by people. And you got NFL players saying that, of course, the quarterback is aware of the footballs being deflated. I have to talk to an NFL person to come up with that conclusion? Really? I'm not going to get into anything else because I got no problems with Bill Simmons. Like I told you, I wish he was still at ESPN. I actually like him. And he is perfectly entitled to disagree with me. My only contention is, why do I have to get something from the NFL to feel the way that I feel? I don't believe that Tom Brady knew nothing. And the reason why I say he was arrogant is because, my God, get your wife on the phone. Call Roger Goodell, invite him out to dinner. Yo, let's get together. Let's talk. Work this out. I believe Tom Brady could have worked it out. But because he's Tom Brady, and it's the Patriots, you thought you could snub your nose at the league. That's what I believe. That's all. Still think Tom Brady's one of the top 2 quarterbacks ever. Still think he's a champion personified. Still think he comes across as being an all-around good guy. I wouldn't be mad at anybody for being jealous of him. If you're a dude and you want to be the Mac, that's the dude you want to be like. Does it get much better? Looks great. Supermodel wife who happens to be richer than him. He's great. He's a champion. I just don't believe he knew nothing. That's all. And I believe that he brought this on himself because, as the saying goes, you can't beat City Hall. That's all. That's it. Plain and simple to me. Know your place. Yeah, you're Tom Brady. You ain't the NFL. Yeah, you're Tom Brady, but you work under a collective bargaining agreement. You didn't formulate it. You don't get to usurp and debunk and shove aside what the Players Association with the league agreed upon. That's what the courts told you yesterday. They're not going to let Tom Brady set precedent. You think Justice Ginsburg, who has the right to live or sustain a stay, is going to sit there and allow Tom Brady and his case to make precedents? Because the worst thing that can happen to you is that you serve 4 games? It's not life or death. The Supreme Court gonna come back to hear that? That's all I'm saying. And for all of those out there, I love how they sit there saying, throw it to the NFL. Do you realize I've been covering collective bargaining since the 90s? I kind of know this stuff. Say whatever you want about my opinions, but to act like I got to get it from the NFL. When I say something about the players in favor of them, the Players Association gave that to me. Georgia Tyler talks to everybody. I can assure you he don't talk to me. I don't talk to that man. I'm talking to anybody. I want to talk to DeMaurice Smith. What the hell I want to talk to Georgia Tyler for? I want to talk to DeMaurice. But that's me. There's no disrespect to Georgia Tyler. You just see guys coming at it and trying to put stuff out there. I am my own man. I believe what I believe. I talked to the Players Association, unbeknownst to Georgia Tyler. I know a lot more about Georgia Tyler than he realizes. DeMaurice Smith, number 2. A whole lot of stuff. I can do a 2-hour show on Georgia Tyler, but I won't. Because I respect his position, I respect him. I can do a whole bunch of stuff on Roger Goodell. And the people who work under him. That's what we do. I'm not going to do that. But my opinions are my own. I formulate them. That's all I'm saying. As it pertains to Bill Simmons, bro, I miss you. Hell, I wish we were here together. And I wish you nothing but the best on your HBO show and your HBO career, because you deserve it. Got nothing but respect for that man. Anybody looking for negative publicity and, oh, we're going to go at it? Wrong, dude. Nope. I like Bill. 888 Mad Dog 6 is the number to call up. That's 888-623-3646. Let's go to Ralph in Florida. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Ralph?
Stephen A., what's going on, man? Always a pleasure talking to you.
All right, bro. What's up?
I got 2 points. The first one, I'm from the same school you come from as far as you don't join the competition. I feel like Kevin Durant really based his decision on 2 things. One, he feels like he can't beat Golden State no matter what. And 2, why sign in the Eastern Conference? Because LeBron's there, and I can't beat him with no team I join there. So the safest thing to do is to join Golden State, and that's why I think it's weak, you know.
Okay.
And the second thing I want to say, I just want your honest opinion. You know, something I've been observing. Do you feel like when it counts the most, I'm talking from a political standpoint now, not basketball, do you feel like President Barack Obama has stood up for us as a people, as black people, as many instances that has happened, like Eric Garner being choked out, saying he can't breathe?
I think our president is in a very precarious situation because he's the president to everyone in America, not just black America. And I think that he's addressed my only issue in terms of the president's unwillingness to address certain things, as much as I would like, is how little he has spoken on Chicago. And I think that's because of Rahm Emanuel, his former chief of staff, who's now the mayor of Chicago. That's it. Outside of that, I find him to be in a very dicey situation. I think he's done the best that he could. But I really, really believe he should have been more outspoken about Chicago because he's a junior senator from that area. He has a home in that area. And what's going on there is unconscionable.
Thank you very much, Stephen A.
Thank you.
Listening to you, man.
Appreciate it, man. Justin in Toronto, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Hey, Stephen A., how are you doing today?
I'm all right. Go ahead, buddy.
All right, so two quick questions for you. One, being a fan of not the major, 3 or 4 NBA teams, what can you really hope for? Like, what's the best-case scenario? The Toronto Raptors, go to the Eastern Conference Finals again and lose to the Cavaliers?
Yep.
And we're just going to do that, and the NBA is happy with that?
No, they're not. That's what Commissioner Adam Silver was saying. He's not happy with that.
Exactly, and I think it just puts there's no aggressiveness now for other teams to even go out and try to find free agents. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Okay, so that's my one point. My other point is you put LeBron at the best small forward of all time. You have to agree that Jordan and Magic are probably the best 2 guards of all time. Tim Duncan's arguably the best power forward of all time.
I don't think it's arguably. I think the closest thing to Tim Duncan was Kevin McHale, and Tim Duncan usurped him.
Okay, so there's your starting 4, and then you put either Russell, Wilt, Kareem, or Shaq at your 5 spot. There's your starting 5. I don't think that starting 5, no one can shoot threes on that team. Do you need to? You know what I mean? Would that team go up against any other starting 5 and win every single series?
I don't know. I mean, I think which team would win? Golden State?
No. That team that we just put together there, with Jordan, Magic, LeBron, Duncan, and say Russell. Would that team win against any other 5?
Probably.
Yeah, I want your opinion on that because it's kind of been an argument there.
Probably. Appreciate the call, man. Thank you. Phil in Florida, you're live with Stephen A. Go ahead, Phil.
Hey, thank you, Stephen. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, buddy, go ahead.
My question is, I want to comment because as a active duty military member, someone earlier brought up the question about training, and he's absolutely right, but I think he illustrated a little bit more. When we're in the military, and I've been in Iraq and Afghanistan, we have certain force protection postures, threat postures. And if we can be overseas, just like the gentleman said, and not draw our weapons when we are really ready to, I think the same training can be given to our, police officers at home. And I think the problem is that in the military, when you do certain things, like, for example, have you seen the movie American Sniper?
Yes.
Okay, remember when he said, hey, if you're wrong, they're going to put you in Leavenworth. See, in the military, when we do things that are wrong, heads will roll. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect, and there's a lot of things that go on in that community as well, but if you do something that egregious, like you would say, heads will roll. Somebody's getting in trouble. I think in local law enforcement and state law enforcement, you have too many inter-communities who protect their own, who aren't speaking up for when they see things going wrong because they want to protect their own job. So I think that if you change the philosophy in the local enforcement from statewide and county to municipal, you might have a better overall change. But since everything is so independent, you have the same problem. You have certain counties which one thing is illegal, and then another county next door is not illegal. And things like that. So I think that's another issue that goes on into our law enforcement of America.
Okay, I can't disagree with that. I mean, that makes points. I just wish there was a definitive answer to all of this, and I'm sorry that it's not. But I appreciate the caller. Thank you so much. Let's go to Roland in Louisiana real quick. Roland, you're live. Go ahead.
How you doing, Mr. Smith?
I'm all right. You only got a minute, bro. Go ahead.
All right. I was just calling in I heard your statement the other day about the incident down in Dallas. My question is that just some of our men and women are going over to Iraq and spend that kind of time over there and looking at all that trauma and coming back without any help of the U.S. Should our government show us some of that blame of the young man the other day? We're not condoning his actions, but some of that could have stemmed from him not getting the proper help I'd just like for you to comment on that. Thank you, sir.
Well, listen, I mean, we could say that some of it may have stemmed from him not getting the proper help, and I can understand that. That's something that we have to appreciate. We've got a lot of people in our country that have psychological issues. Everyone is not the same. Everybody is not as strong as the next person. Everybody doesn't have the same intestinal fortitude and can deal with the same trials and tribulations in similar fashion. We owe it to one another to be incredibly sensitive to all of that, facing that reality and tackling it head on. But in the end, it doesn't usurp the lives of the innocent. And if you are an innocent bystander, or if you are an officer that's just protecting and serving, and you lose your life because somebody had issues, their issues don't supersede that of God-fearing human beings that are trying to protect and serve society. My empathy and sympathy goes out to those officers more than it does to their killers, bottom line. Mad Dog Russo's up next. Holla at y'all in 22 hours. Peace and love.